Scarred by a childhood of abandonment that left deep wounds on her soul, Haley grew up building a fortress around her heart. With fierce determination, she vowed to change her life, no matter the cost. Every night, she heard the screams followed by silence. Every morning, she woke up alone in a cold corner of the house. It all fueled that promise. She remembered the musty smell of the old mattress, the sound of rain dripping through the cracked ceiling, and swore to herself that one day she would have something better. At 19, opportunity seemed to knock. A childhood friend, Jessica, who had moved to New York City, wired her bus fare with the promise of a new beginning. The message arrived on a gray Thursday afternoon as Haley was mopping the floor of a greasy diner for a few bucks. Her calloused hands trembled as she held her old phone, reading the words that seemed too good to be true. Stepping off the bus, Haley was mesmerized. The towering skyscrapers, the vibrant lights, and the frenetic pace of the metropolis were a world away from everything she had ever known, a universe brimming with possibility. The city smelled different, a mix of hot asphalt, street food, and expensive perfume. The constant noise of cars, horns, and the fast-paced chatter of passers-by made her dizzy and fascinated all at once. She clutched her worn-out suitcase to her chest, feeling her heart pound like a drum. Jessica was waiting at the terminal, wearing a tight dress and stilettos so high they echoed on the marble floor. She was different. More makeup, an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. The 2 years apart had transformed the shy girl Haley once knew into someone almost unrecognizable. For the first few days, Jessica was vague about her job. She just said it was different and that it paid well, very well. Haley didn't press. She was too busy absorbing every detail of this new life. At night, lying on the couch in Jessica's small but clean apartment, she would gaze out at the city lights, feeling a mix of hope and fear. One night, oozing confidence, Jessica finally said she worked somewhere that paid incredibly well and offered to introduce her. The place was Glimmer, a sophisticated, pulsating nightclub. But before they left, Jessica insisted on giving Haley a makeover. She lent her a red dress that left little to the imagination, painted her face with vibrant colors, and styled her long, dark hair into sensual waves. The moment they walked in, every eye turned to Haley's stunning beauty. The air was thick, with colored lights dancing to the rhythm of a throbbing electronic beat. The smell of expensive cologne mixed with alcohol and smoke hung heavy in the air. Men in impeccable suits occupied VIP tables, their hungry eyes scanning every inch of the women who circulated the room. Wow. The men can't stop staring at you, Jessica whispered, a sly smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. There was something in that smile, a hint of poorly disguised envy. A chill ran down Haley's spine, unsettled by the charged atmosphere and the covetous looks. Her palms were sweating, and she instinctively tugged at the hem of her dress, trying to cover more of her legs. "Relax, you'll get used to it," her friend said with a shrug. "Oh, and a piece of advice. I always go for the richest ones." "Richest?" Haley asked, naive, still not fully grasping where she was. "Of course. All kinds of clients come here, even millionaires." Jessica leaned in, her voice low and conspiratorial. "There are CEOs, politicians, even celebrities sometimes. The secret is knowing who's worth your time." Every step Haley took was like walking a runway, attracting attention she had never experienced. It didn't take long for the club's owners, impressed, to offer her a job as a dancer. Julian, a middle-aged man with calculating eyes and an expensive Italian suit, watched her for several long minutes before approaching. "You've got something special, kid. Something that's going to be a huge hit here," he said, lighting a pricey cigar. "I'm willing to pay you 3 times what you'd make anywhere else, but I expect total dedication." When she heard the salary, a sum that could finally give her the independence she craved, the daring Haley accepted immediately. They were numbers she had never imagined seeing in her life. With that money, she could rent her own apartment, buy new clothes, maybe even take a course. The word independence echoed in her mind like a sacred mantra. She dove headfirst into her new life, practicing her dancing relentlessly every day in the apartment she shared with Jessica. She would wake up before the sun rose and practice for hours. Her muscles ached, her feet swelled, but she didn't stop. She had to be perfect. Jessica, who had seemed excited at her arrival, started making increasingly acidic comments. "You're training too hard. You'll injure yourself before you even start," she'd say with false concern. But Haley didn't listen. She was too determined, too hungry for this chance to change her life. Her debut was a roaring success, surprising everyone, especially the owners. The music started, the lights dimmed, and when the spotlight hit her, the room fell silent. Haley moved with a natural grace that seemed to defy gravity. Every movement was precise, sensual, mesmerizing. She would close her eyes and let herself go, forgetting for a moment where she was and why she was there. In those moments, it was just her and the music. The spotlight, once shared, was now fixed entirely on Star, her stage name. And with the spotlight came envy. Jessica, who had brought her into this world, began to feel the bitter sting of being overshadowed. In the following days, Jessica started coming home late, avoiding conversation. When she did speak, it was to casually mention how much money she'd made the night before, always emphasizing it wasn't just from dancing. Star's success wasn't limited to the stage. Powerful, wealthy men began making offers to spend the night with her. Business cards were left on her dressing table, and expensive bottles of champagne were sent with notes. An oil tycoon offered $10,000 for one night. An influential politician doubled it. Though her only desire was to dance, the promise of easy money began to seduce her. This could be her chance to buy her own home and seal her independence forever. Julian summoned her to his lavish office a week after her debut. He poured expensive wine into crystal glasses and got straight to the point. "Haley, you're my best dancer, but you could be so much more. I have clients willing to pay a fortune for you. One night, just one, and you'd make what you earn in 6 months of dancing." Her stomach churned, but the image of her own home, of never having to depend on anyone again, was too tempting. "I'll think about it," was all she could manage to say. Across town, in a world governed by law and ethics, lived Ethan. At 36, he was a respected lawyer, known for his integrity and his work at a prestigious firm, where he fought for justice and defended the rights of the underprivileged. His routine was meticulous. Wake up at 6, run 3 miles in the park, have breakfast while reading the news, and be at his desk before 8. His life was orderly, predictable, safe. But there was a loneliness he wouldn't even admit to himself. At 36, he had built a brilliant career but had no real personal life. Brief relationships that never went anywhere, business dinners that masked the absence of true intimacy. His secretary, Mrs. Gable, a kind 60-year-old woman who treated him like a son, always said he needed to find someone special. "Mr. Ethan, you can't live just for your work. A handsome, successful man like you should have a family," she would say, every Friday like a ritual. It was supposed to be a day like any other. Ethan showered, used the same cologne he'd worn for years, put on his impeccable charcoal gray suit, and grabbed his Italian leather briefcase. Breakfast was quick, just a strong espresso and a piece of toast. As he got into his car and drove toward the office, a brutal scene on the sidewalk caught his eye. A man was violently grabbing a young woman, trying to drag her into a dark alley. Ethan's heart pounded. He could pretend he hadn't seen it, keep driving, get to the office on time. But that wasn't who he was. Without a second thought, he slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching on the asphalt. "Let her go!" Ethan yelled, striding towards them with firm steps, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Mind your own business!" The attacker growled, a grimy man with bloodshot eyes. He pressed something against the young woman's back. "A gun. Please, just let the woman go. We can talk about this." Ethan's voice was calm but authoritative. Years in the courtroom had taught him to control his fear, to show no weakness. "You a cop? Spit it out." "No, I'm just a citizen. But I know you don't want to do this. You don't want to make your situation worse." The young woman, terrified, whispered with a broken voice, "Please, help me." Ethan could see the terror in her brown eyes, her body trembling. There was something about her that struck him deeply. A vulnerability. A fragility that contrasted with a spark of determination he recognized from somewhere within himself. The mugger, cornered, turned to Ethan. "Give me that watch and your phone. Try anything and I shoot." "All right," Ethan said calmly, removing the items with slow, deliberate movements. The watch was a family heirloom from his grandfather. The phone held years of important contacts, but none of that mattered now. "I'll give you the watch and the phone, and you let her go, okay?" The deal was made. The thief fled, disappearing into the alleyways. Ethan supported the girl, who was shaking uncontrollably. It was Haley. He took off his blazer and wrapped it around her shoulders. She was wearing only a thin dress, too flimsy for the cool morning. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern, holding her arms to steady her. "Yes, I am. Thank you so much. I thought I was going to die. That miserable crook?" She looked at him as if he were an angel. No one had ever risked so much for her. "Don't walk around here alone," he advised before making sure she was safe and heading on his way. But something about that girl stayed with him. Throughout the day, amidst meetings and legal briefs, he found himself thinking of her. That night at the club, the co-owner was pressuring Haley. Victoria was a woman of 50 who looked 40 with obvious plastic surgery and a cruelty in her eyes that could freeze blood. "Your last performance was good, but it can be better. You need to be bolder. Surprise them at the end. Take it all off." "No, I won't do that," Haley protested, her stomach twisting into knots. "I'm the one who gives the orders here," the woman snapped. "You are the star of Glimmer. The next performance needs to be spectacular." Victoria moved closer, her cloying perfume invading Haley's personal space. "Or did you think you could get rich just by dancing with your clothes on? Wake up to reality, girl." The city's vibrant nightlife created the perfect backdrop for Ethan's birthday. His friends and colleagues, wanting to pull him out of his serious routine, had planned a surprise. Mark, his best friend from law school, led the group. "Dude, you need to loosen up. You're 36 going on 60, Mark said, tying a blindfold over Ethan's eyes. They blindfolded him and guided him through a chorus of laughter and mystery. The smell of the urban night was gradually replaced by perfume, alcohol, and excitement. Ethan felt the ground change under his feet, from rough pavement to a plush carpet. When the blindfold was removed, Ethan found himself in the middle of Glimmer. His expression shifted from curiosity to instant irritation. "Are you guys crazy? You know I hate these kinds of places." He turned to leave immediately. As his friends laughed, trying to convince him to stay for at least one drink, Ethan, already on his way out, cast one last glance at the stage. A dancer was moving with hypnotic grace. The world seemed to slow down. The colored lights painted her skin, her fluid and sensual movements captivating everyone in the room. Suddenly, his brain made the connection. It wasn't just any dancer. It was the young woman he had saved from the mugging. His eyes widened, the shock stealing the air from his lungs. On stage, Haley was preparing for the climax of her performance, the moment she would strip completely for the first time. Her heart was racing. The hot lights made her skin glisten with sweat. She kept telling herself it was just a job, that the money would be worth it. Her hands trembled as she reached for the first ribbon of her costume. That's when her eyes met Ethan's in the audience. That serious, piercing gaze, which had once given her a sense of safety, now hit her with a wave of shame she never expected. She froze completely. Her hands hung in the air, her body rigid. His face was a mixture of surprise, recognition, and something that looked like disappointment. She felt as though she were naked even while still clothed, exposed in a way that went beyond the physical. The music played on, but Star was motionless. No one understood the sudden change. Murmurs began to spread through the crowd. Victoria, watching from the wings, had her face contorted in rage. Ethan, feeling completely out of place and disturbed by the situation, turned his back to leave. At that moment, a drunk man bumped into him violently, spilling an expensive drink all over his suit and creating a small chaos. His white shirt was stained with red wine. Shaken, Haley watched from a distance, unable to resume her performance. Tears threatened to fall, smudging her heavy makeup. She ran off the stage, leaving a confused and angry audience behind. Ethan removed his soaked blazer and, before leaving, turned to his friends. "Never do this again! I'm leaving. Good night." His voice was sharp, final. In the bathroom, he splashed his face with water again and again, trying to wash away the uncomfortable feeling. The cold water ran down his neck, soaking his shirt even more. He looked at his reflection and saw a disturbed man. Why did the image of that girl on stage affect him so much? He had only known her for a few hours. As he left the bathroom, he ran right into her, still in her dancer's costume, a black robe thrown over her shoulders. "Aren't you the man who helped me?" Haley asked, her voice trembling but trying to sound confident. "Yes, that's me." He could barely look at her. "Are you looking for a girl? I can give you a private dance as a reward." The words came out automatically, a memorized script. The coldness in his voice cut her like a knife. "No, miss, I don't. In my opinion, that has never been and never will be a dignified profession." His words wounded her deeply, more than anything anyone had ever said, because they came from someone who, for a brief moment, she believed had seen something good in her. She felt the tears finally escape. "And who are you to judge me?" she exploded. You don't know anything about me, nothing about why I'm here." But he was already gone, leaving only the echo of his words and his masculine scent in the air. The following days were a blur for Haley. The failed performance led to vicious gossip and mounting pressure from the club owners. Victoria summoned her for a tense meeting. "You embarrassed me in front of my best clients. That can't happen again. Next time, you will do what I told you. Everything, or you're out." Jessica, meanwhile, dripped her poison disguised as friendship. She would casually mention how she landed a rich client the night before, the expensive gift she received, always looking at Haley with a fake smile. "You know, Haley, maybe this world just isn't for you. Maybe you should go back to your hometown," she'd say with false sweetness. Haley's life felt like it was falling apart when fate intervened tragically. It was a rainy Tuesday, the sky heavy and gray. She was distracted by her phone, obsessively rereading a text she had typed to Ethan but never sent. As she crossed the street, she didn't see the car. She only heard the screech of tires and then the impact. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Haley woke up in a hospital room 3 hours later, her leg in a cast and her body aching. "Where am I? What happened?" Her voice was weak, her throat dry. A familiar voice answered, "In the hospital. You were in an accident." It was Ethan. He was sitting by her bed, his face etched with guilt and concern. There were dark circles under his eyes as if he hadn't slept. "An accident? No, I can't. How am I going to work now?" She despaired, trying to sit up and feeling a searing pain shoot up her leg. "Wait, did you hit me?" "The light was red for pedestrians and you were distracted," he explained, mortified, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I swear it wasn't my fault. I slammed on the brakes, I tried to swerve, but..." He paused, his voice cracking. "Don't worry, I'll cover all the expenses. The doctor, medicine, physical therapy, everything." Jessica arrived shortly after, her high heels clacking on the hospital floor. She assessed the situation with a calculating gaze before playing the part of the worried friend. "Oh my God, Haley! I was so worried," she said, but her eyes were cold. Then she turned on Ethan with hostility. "You, get out of here now! You almost killed her?" She kicked Ethan out of the room and spent the next hour fueling Haley's anger, suggesting she sue him, that she demand a fortune in damages. "I was going to be auctioned off tonight. My big chance," Haley lamented, tears streaming down her face. "Julian offered $50,000. $50,000! And now I've lost everything." Ethan returned later, after Jessica had left. He brought flowers and a determined expression. "I don't understand how a beautiful young woman like you stoops to this," he said, placing the flowers on the nightstand. "You deserve more. You deserve better. And you think you know what I deserve?" She retorted bitterly. "You with your expensive suit and your perfect life?" "My life isn't perfect," he said softly. Far from it. Something in his vulnerability made her stop attacking. For the first time, she truly looked at him. She saw past the successful lawyer and saw a lonely man carrying his own burdens. Days later, regretting her harshness and moved by something she couldn't name, Haley got his number from the hospital. When he answered, she felt her heart race. I called to apologize. The accident was my fault. You still offered to help, and I was horrible to you. I can see you're a good man." That apology opened a door between them. Hesitant conversations became frequent. He visited almost every day, bringing books, fruit, sometimes just his presence. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her about his cases, about the satisfaction of helping people. She shared small pieces of her story, always avoiding the most painful details. A week later, Haley was discharged but would need crutches for another month. Ethan insisted on helping her, but she refused, saying Jessica would take care of her. The truth was, she was scared. Scared of getting too close, scared of what he might think if he knew the whole truth about her life. One night, 2 weeks after the accident, Ethan called to see how she was doing. Haley was alone in the apartment when the phone rang. She smiled when she saw his name on the screen. But before she could speak, she heard the door fly open. Julian had let himself in with the spare key, all the owners. Had to the dancers' apartments. He was drunk and furious. "You think you can just blow me off? You owe me money. You owe me performances," he snarled, advancing on her. Over the phone, Ethan heard a man's voice in the background. "Are you going to keep ignoring me?" Then Haley screamed, "Let go of me." And the line went dead. Ethan's heart stopped. He didn't think, he just acted. He grabbed his car keys and sped to the club, breaking every speed limit. His heart hammered against his ribs. Terrible images flashed through his mind. He found her being harassed by Julian in the apartment above the club, the situation about to spiral out of control. The door was ajar, and he could hear her screams. Without hesitating, he broke down the door, scooped her into his arms, and shoved Julian away with a violent push. "Who do you think you are?" Julian yelled. "Her lawyer," Ethan lied. "And you're going to be in a world of trouble if you ever touch her again." He carried her out of the building, down the stairs as she protested, under the shocked stares of everyone. Jessica watched from the dance floor, her face a mask of envy and satisfaction. "Ethan, put me down right now. What have you done? You're ruining my life," she yelled, struggling as he placed her in his car. "Thanks to you, I still haven't spent a night with anyone. You've managed to ruin everything. Why are you doing this?" He grabbed her by the shoulders, his intense gaze meeting hers. The world seemed to stop. Both of them were breathing heavily, their faces inches apart. The answer came with a sincerity that left her breathless. "Because I love you." The 3 words echoed in the silence of the car. Haley was paralyzed, her eyes wide, unable to process what she had just heard. No one had ever said those words to her. Not her father, not her mother, not any of the men who had passed through her life. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough. I know you're strong, that you're a fighter, and that you deserve to have someone by your side." Tears began to fall freely down her face. Tears of confusion, of fear, of something that felt like hope. The silence in the car was broken only by the truth of those 3 words. Haley, the woman who believed she was unlovable, had found love where she least expected it. There, in this man of integrity and justice, was her real chance to change her life. And with a renewed determination, she wanted that change more than anything in the world. Haley's decision to refuse to sell her body was a brave step, but one that infuriated the owners of Glimmer. Julian and Victoria showed up at Jessica's apartment the next morning, demanding an explanation. "You signed a contract," Victoria seethed. "You still owe me 3 months of work." Ethan, who was with Haley, stood between them. "What kind of contract?" "Let me see it." As he examined the document, his expression grew serious. He pointed to several clauses. "This is illegal. And this too. This contract is worthless in court. In fact, you'll be lucky if I don't sue you for exploitation." The tension was palpable. Julian took a threatening step toward Ethan, but stopped when he saw the unwavering determination in the lawyer's eyes. "This isn't over," he threatened, before storming out. Meanwhile, the love between her and Ethan blossomed in a way neither of them had expected. He rescued her from that painful past, not just physically, but emotionally. For the first time in her life, Haley experienced what it was like to be treated with respect, with tenderness. He introduced her to his world, took her to dinners at beautiful restaurants, and introduced her as his girlfriend to his friends who, after the initial surprise, welcomed her with genuine warmth. Mrs. Gable, his secretary, adored Haley instantly. "Finally! A real lady," she'd say, hugging Haley with motherly affection. But it wasn't all a fairy tale. Jessica, consumed by envy, tried one last desperate move. She sent old photos of Haley from the club to Ethan's law firm, hoping to destroy their relationship. The photos circulated among the partners, causing a scandal. Ethan was called into a tense meeting. The 3 senior partners of the firm were there, their faces grim. "Ethan, this is very embarrassing. A nightclub dancer? You have to think of the firm's reputation," one of them said. But Ethan stood up, looking each of them in the eye. "The woman I love had a difficult past. She did what she had to do to survive. But she is a person of integrity, courage, and more honesty than half the clients we defend. If you can't accept that, then maybe I don't belong at this firm anymore." The silence was deafening. Then the oldest partner, Dr. Miller, who had always been a mentor to Ethan, began to clap slowly. "Well said. You're a good man, Ethan. Better than we deserve." He looked at the other partners. "I think we all have things in our past we're not proud of. Who are we to judge? The crisis passed, but it left its mark." Haley felt guilty, thinking she was ruining Ethan's life. "You deserve someone better," she said one night, crying. He held her face in his hands. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Don't you dare think otherwise." Months passed. Haley started a technical course in interior design, discovering a talent she never knew she had. She envisioned a bright future, one built on a solid foundation. One day, a call from her hometown shook her to the core. A voice she hadn't heard in years, a distant aunt. "Haley, your father's dying. He's been asking for you." Her world stopped. All the old wounds she thought had scarred over ripped open again. Ethan took her hand. "Do you want me to go with you?" She nodded, unable to speak. Haley traveled back to the hell she had run from, but this time she wasn't alone. The town seemed smaller, dirtier, sadder than she remembered. The house she grew up in was in ruins. She found her father in a crowded public hospital, looking unrecognizable. The man who was once strong and violent was now just skin and bones, ravaged by cirrhosis and unable to speak. His eyes, however, still held a flicker of recognition when he saw her. With a lump in her throat and Ethan waiting outside to give her privacy, she took his hand. His skin was cold, the bones sharp beneath the surface. "Dad, I forgive you. Go in peace." Tears streamed down the man's face. He tried to speak, but only a hoarse sound came out. She continued, her voice soft but firm. "I met a wonderful man who was taking care of me. I've never felt so loved. I'm happy, Dad. Despite everything, I'm happy." She saw something in his eyes, maybe regret, maybe relief. She stayed there, holding his hand until she felt his grip loosen. Half an hour later, he was gone. There were no final words, no cinematic redemption. Just a quiet end to a tumultuous life. Her mother appeared at the funeral. She was aged, stooped by the weight of her guilt. After the burial, in a dusty cemetery under a scorching sun, she approached Haley, consumed by remorse. Her mother knelt right there on the dry earth of the cemetery and begged for forgiveness for all the suffering she had caused. For every time she had closed her eyes to the abuse, for every time she chose a bottle over her daughter, for every night she left Haley alone and hungry. "Mom, get up, please. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, but I need to forgive you to move on." With a compassion that surprised even herself, Haley forgave her, making peace with her past. She helped her mother to her feet, and for a brief moment they hugged. It wasn't an embrace filled with love, but it was one of closure, of acceptance. Years later, the couple was incredibly happy. Haley had graduated in interior design and opened her own small firm. Ethan continued to fight for justice, but now with a renewed purpose. They married in a simple but emotional ceremony with Mrs. Gable crying in the front row. Haley's life had become a dream she never dared to dream. Conversations about starting a family and having children became frequent, weaving together their plans for a future filled with the joy and love that once they both believed was impossible to find. One Saturday afternoon, as they were decorating what would be the baby's room, Haley paused and looked out the window. The big city that had once terrified her was now her home. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her. "What are you thinking about? About how strange life is? How a random mugging, a car accident, and a moment of shame in a nightclub brought me here, to you." He kissed her neck softly. Maybe it wasn't random. Maybe it was destiny. She turned in his arms, looking into the eyes that had seen her at her worst, but chose to see so much more. "Thank you," she said, "for loving me when I couldn't love myself." "Thank you," he replied, "for showing me that life is more than lawsuits and routines. For teaching me how to truly live." And there, in the room that would soon be filled with a child's laughter, two souls who found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances sealed their love. It wasn't a perfect story. It had its scars and imperfections. But it was theirs. And it was real. And for Haley, who spent her childhood believing she was unworthy of love, that was more than enough. It was everything. YouTube outro script. Hey, story lovers! What an emotional journey for Haley and Ethan. Their story shows us that no matter how deep the scars of the past are, love has the power to heal and build a new beginning. We saw the strength of a woman who fought against the world to survive, but never lost hope of being loved, and the courage of a man who dared to look past appearances and judgments to see someone's true soul. They remind us that our worth isn't defined by our mistakes, but by the strength we find to start over. Now it's your turn. What was the most powerful moment for you? Ethan's courage when he defended her on the street? The unexpected declaration of love that changed everything? Or Haley's strength in forgiving her past? Let us know in the comments below. Share this story so more people can believe in the power of second chances and suggest themes for our next video. A huge hug, and see you next time, where we'll prove once again that love is the most revolutionary force in the universe.